Do you find yourself struggling to get your charting done at work, bringing charts home in the evenings and on weekends? It's just stressing you out because you can't feel like you can ever keep up. If this is you, I want you to know that you're not alone and that I have a free 2-minute quiz, the Charting Efficiency Checkup, designed to help you find your next steps with your charting. If this is you and you want to take this quiz, please click the link below. It's going to be coaching.mededwell.com/quiz. I would love to help you. It's really a valuable exercise. I first heard it earlier this year at a conference, and speaker John Houghton was sharing, and I followed up with him afterwards about where this exercise came from, and he wasn't sure that he could find who to attribute it to either, but I want to share it with you and take it a step further than he did because it really, really resonated with me. And it starts by asking yourself this question: what do you want? And if you're at a safe point where you can take something out and write, I'd love for you to do that. If you need to pause this and come back to it, or listen now and come back to this again in the future, I really want you to engage with this exercise. So first, what do you want? And say, write down "I want," and then write in what is your desired transformation, your goal, what you want to happen. It could be a big thing, it could be a small thing, personal or professional. So I'll give an example from my own clinical practice. I want to take great care of my patients. So write down "I want," and then your desired transformation, and then I want you to write "but," B-U-T. And then next to that, I want you to put whatever's in the way, the obstacle or excuse that maybe you've shared with yourself, you've given to others as to why you can't do this, why you haven't done it to this point. Because if it wasn't there, probably already would have achieved that. And so I want to take great care of my patients, but I get 15-minute visit slots, and my patients have complex needs and often require the use of interpreters to communicate well with them. So write down what your obstacle, the thing that is keeping you from achieving what you want. So then I want you to look at your paper, wherever you're taking notes, and say, okay, I want this desired transformation, but then I want you to take and cross out the but. Cross out the but and change it to an and. Change it to an and. I want this desired transformation, and this obstacle or excuse that you previously offered is still there. And then write the word "so." And then next to "so," I want you to write down what you will do. What will you do? Even though that obstacle is still there, what will you do? For me, I want to take great care of my patients, and I get 15-minute visit slots, and my patients have complex needs and often require interpreters. So I will have my staff set up the interpreter tablet before I go in the room. I will huddle before clinic with my team so that we're on the same page more often. I'll work to obtain questionnaires in my patients' preferred languages. So now you have "I want," this desired transformation, and this obstacle or prior excuse is still there. So what will you do? And this is where I then said, this is really helpful, and yet I want to take it a step further. I want you to write, after what you'll do, I want you to write "because." I want you to write "because," and then fill in your core priorities or motivation, your reason for wanting to get that desired transformation, to keep doing something that's so what will you do, even though there's that obstacle. Because willpower alone cannot be the driving force. When I was going through burnout, my first year out of residency, I was pushing, and it wasn't enough to sustain the work, the level of work that I needed in order to keep up. So for me, I said, I want to take great care of my patients, and I get 15-minute visit slots. And my patients have complex needs and require interpreters, so I'll have the interpreter tablet set up before going in the room. I'll huddle with my team before clinic and obtain questionnaires in my patients' preferred languages, because I believe each patient is valuable, regardless of where they're from or the languages they speak. It's important to see that the thing that's getting in the way, you can either see it as an obstacle or as an excuse. So when we started this exercise, we had the but, and it often portrays the circumstance, what's currently there, as an excuse, something you can't get past. Leads to a certain amount of resignation, a decrease in actions that are helpful or positive or productive. It often keeps you in victim mode. Like, I can't do this because. On the other hand, seeing it from, I want this, and there's this thing that's been in the way, it sees the circumstance, the situation as still an obstacle, but maybe it's something that could potentially be overcome or worked around, or even if it's not going to change, there's still an intentional action, an intentional thought that you are able to move forward with. And this ultimately uses your core motivation, your priorities, rather than just willpower. Ultimately, this restores your agency, saying, I can do this. I can make a difference for myself, for my patients, for my family, for what's important to me. So I want you to really take a moment to pause this episode and look over what you've written. Look over what you've written and see how this may not have been your story. This may not have been something that you had taken the time to see, oh wait, these obstacles are still there, but there are still things that I can do to move forward because whatever that is, your core priority, your core motivation. And so when you think about this, it's important to note that sometimes these thoughts that come up, we kind of judge ourselves. We think, really? Why did I think that? Here we go again. Why did I do that? And yet, normalizing those thoughts, having compassion for yourself, is about acknowledging, well, of course my brain thought that. It thought that in that situation. It was an expected response to whatever that stress was. That trauma. That code I went to. Whatever it was. Others would often think similar things. And like I said, we're often our own worst critics. When my patients come in, especially my teenagers, many times they tell me they're struggling with something, they're stressed about something, and I can tell that they're beating themselves up. I then walk them through the same process. I say, let's say your friend is struggling. They just failed a test. They forgot a deadline and didn't turn in their paper or an application for something. If they came to you and said, hey, I'm really down, this was what's going on, how would you respond to them? Especially if they were blaming themselves and couldn't see a way forward. I often get some sort of empathy some empathetic response, or something that's thoughtful and caring. And then reiterate to them that this is the same response that you yourself need from yourself. And ultimately from there, we're able to work through a little bit of what seems to be keeping you from giving that same encouragement to yourself that you would have been so quick to give to one of your friends. So these thoughts that come up, they're often really sneaky. They can be just kind of automatic, just there in the background. Someone cuts you off, someone sends you a nasty email. They can lead to frustration, anger, anxiety, stress, shame, and more. Rather than just pushing these feelings away or looking to change your circumstances, it's important to sit with the feelings, to experience them, to allow them, and give yourself space to then be able to have an intentional thought, to make an intentional decision. An example that I want to share with you is sometimes these thoughts, these feelings, it's not always what you think it is. So my wife and I were talking about a wooden trunk. It had been in my family for a little bit, and it came from my grandma. It was kind of a general wood stain, and my wife said we should paint it. And I said no. And she definitely has the design sense in our house, and I do not. But I was pretty insistent that I didn't want to paint it. I only realized later, as I was getting some coaching, that really it wasn't about the trunk itself. It was about the fact that I missed my grandma. She lived till her mid-90s and had just passed away in the past year or so. And I missed her. And so thinking about painting the trunk made me have thoughts about my grandma. And so this is part of the automatic thoughts that by feeling that sadness, that I missed her, that grief, I was able to then engage with my wife differently and myself differently. Say, of course, you missed your grandma. And because of that, you thought, no, we shouldn't, or she shouldn't say that, or she's... And really, I needed to look at my own thoughts, my own feelings, and to allow myself to feel that grief. And then to be able to say, okay, I can move forward. And we didn't paint the trunk, but it also didn't get a prominent place in our decor. So it's currently assisting with some of our storage. And so once you've felt those feelings, it's important to think, okay, what intentional thoughts can be helpful for me, can help you take that next step. Maybe it's simply, I can take a next step. Maybe it's, I can take good care of my patients. I can finish my charts in the room. I'm a good medical assistant. I'm a good nurse. I'm a good doctor, a manager, a good leader. Maybe it's that I am a leader. One thing that I found particularly insightful and just poignant for me was I got this little gift from my employer. And it's this little metal or leather, just kind of like keychain thing. And it says, you make a difference. And I saw that and it really resonated with me. And I was like, yes, that's what I want to be about. And even though they've gotten me this fleece jacket or whatever else in the past, this was the most meaningful thing that they had given me. Because this really was a thought that helped me connect with my purpose and helped me in continuing to move forward. So you think, okay, so there's these automatic sneaky thoughts and I'm just supposed to push them off because they're not helpful. And yet you're like, really? I can't stop thinking about pink elephants or whatever that thought that just won't go away, that stress of your schedule, the workload, the in basket, you name it. So it's figuring out, what do you want to keep top of mind? Is it you make a difference? Is it I'm a great doctor, or I make a difference and I care for my patients really well and I'm here for them? It's all about that focus and redirecting that focus when things want to bubble up and say, oh, no, I'm running behind again. I must not be. It's like, you're doing a great job. You are showing up and being there for your patients. So by doing that, you are able to live in alignment with your priorities. So I want to leave you with 5 ways of how you can recharge. First way is about connecting with your purpose and priorities. Looking at work-life balance versus integration, yeah, there's going to be some seasons that are busier, that you might have to stay late or pick up an extra shift. But if you know what your core priorities are, how you're taking good care of patients, how you're making a difference, how you're doing this for yourself, your friends, your family, your future, it allows you to live your life, work and outside of work, in alignment, because you're a whole human person. And so knowing your why is super important. And so is the second thing, which is mindfulness and self-care. Some of these things that kind of go along with having a healthy lifestyle: exercise, moving, nutrition, sleep, drinking enough water, taking time to reflect, for meditation, mindfulness, if you have a spiritual or other reflective practice, getting out and going for a walk, being in nature, calling a friend. These things are important because they remind us of who we are as a whole person, rather than just for the production, for the throughput, for the procedures, for the visits. It's about you being fully human. Thirdly, to recharge, it's important to create and be a part of supportive environments. It's that team and connection inside and outside of medicine. To finding who is your support system and checking in with people. It's about asking, how are you? And then really listening and being okay with that long or potentially hard answer. But it's also important to note that you don't owe everyone the full explanation. You can say, yeah, I'm having a rough day. And if they're not a safe person, or it's not a good time to open up to them, maybe you just leave it there. But for me, having people, colleagues, friends that I could open up to is really helpful. I've shared on the podcast before about how my wife and I lost twins in miscarriage. And it was really hard. And I had to open up and say, hey, I'm really struggling. I'm really struggling today. I miss my boys. And it was just really helpful to have the permission to be able to say that, because sometimes, if I'm honest, in the past, I was like, how are you? Good. You? Good. Great. Have a great day. And yet, having the space to be vulnerable is really, really helpful, because it's part of what I'm actually dealing with, rather than just kind of saying, I'm going to put this over here in this compartment and try and keep it over there. It's like trying to suppress and change those automatic sneaky thoughts. They're always going to be there. It may be different on a particular day, or less intense, that level of grief after a period of time, but it's still there. So, thirdly, to create and be a part of supportive environments. And fourth, to recharge, it's important to find how you can serve others in your team. to jump in and help. It might be things like covering for someone at lunch, being around if you're still waiting for your patient or you have lunch at a different time, and that way if your colleague has patient receiving vaccines or getting blood work, that you're around if they need something. Or you have a couple of no-shows at the end of the morning and you jump in and say, hey, would you like it if I see one of your patients? I see that maybe you haven't seen them before or you're running behind, and if you'd like, I can see one for you. And then be okay with whatever they say. If they're saying, hey, no, actually, these ones I really know, I'll make sure I get to them, but I really appreciate the offer. I've been on both the giving and receiving end of that. Is super helpful. It might even be jumping in an emergency. Last minute call off, family emergency came up. My colleagues jumped in and saw my patients when my wife went into labor during the miscarriage, because I was able to be there at the hospital in the emergency room with my wife, and it was really valuable for me. And ultimately, you get to choose when you want to go above and beyond for your patients, your colleagues, but finding that opportunity to do that is really, really valuable. And finally, it's important to be the change that you want to see. To say, I want this, and changing the but to the and. So what will you do because of your big priority? It's important to seek to make change, to overcome obstacles, and take action that aligns with those priorities. And these may be changes at an individual, a clinic, or system level, or even beyond that. So I want to take a moment and talk specifically about path to change in systems. Systems issues can change, but they often involve multiple people advocating and working over time. But it can't be at the expense of yourself. We talked about the quadruple aim in the incorporation not only of cost, quality, the health of populations, but also the work life of healthcare workers. I hear no margin, no mission, but it's not just for finances. It's even more important for self-care, for caring for our teams. If we, as individuals, those providing the healthcare, have no margin, we're not going to be able to work towards those goals, those caring for patients, of caring for them well, of reducing the amount of time that they spend sitting where we're not actively doing something to help them. Because without margin, there's going to be more burnout. Physicians, other providers, staff, leaders, and the organization that you are a part of, their mission will fall flat, and patients are going to suffer. And so if you're feeling burned out, talk to a friend, talk to a leader. You may have to take some time off. You might have to rework your schedule. There's often an employee assistance program or some other opportunity to get help. Please do it. If you're feeling overwhelmed and thinking, I don't know if I can do this anymore, this whole life and medicine and all this stress and trauma and everything is so overwhelming that I'm not sure life is worth living. You can call the national hotline 988. You can call or text, and someone can help you. You are not alone. So to recap today, I want you to feel your feelings, to notice the thoughts and stories that come up for you. I want you to connect with your purpose, to connect with others, to take action on your next step that is aligned with you. So as we wrap up today, I just wanted to thank you for joining me again here on the MedEdWell podcast. If you are thinking, hey, I want to take my next step, I want to really engage with this, I want to encourage you that one way, particularly around your charting, is to take my charting efficiency checkup. It's a 2-minute quiz designed to help you find your next step, to say, where am I? What do I need help with? And where can I move forward? You can do that over at coaching.mededwell.com/quiz. And I would love to help you. That's why I'm here. That's why it's part of my because. I want to help as many people in medicine with their wellness. And there's a lot of challenges. So I'm going to keep showing up with the podcast, with videos, with resources to help you. So I'd encourage you to check that out. The link will be in your podcast player below this video. I would love to help you and to talk. Feel free to respond or reach out, send me a message. Follow me on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. I want to be there for you. I want you to feel your feelings, to notice your thoughts and stories, and to take your next step. Thank you so much for all that you do, and have a great day.